Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. Time for DC Spotlight for the week of April 16th, 2024. Coming out a day late. Sorry, we had some stuff come up. I couldn't record on Monday like we usually do. So this will be dropping Tuesday, same days as the books. Overall, I thought it was an okay week. I don't think it was as strong as last week. Last week I mentioned that there was nothing that was like a really, really high. There's nothing really, really low. This week's kind of the same, with maybe those peaks and valleys a little bit higher, a little bit lower, respectively. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good week. What do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I agree. And just as a quick side comment, I note the top 200 this week had DC Comics ranked relatively low overall. It was probably definitely a low point for DC sales. And I made the comment to you that I think that the quality of DC overall, I find to be higher than the sales numbers would suggest. And and for this week, there's definitely some comics, some strong contenders for that I really enjoyed this week. I got at least one rant in me this week, and we'll get into. But overall, I enjoyed this week's comics more or less. And I'll probably maybe bitch a little bit about one and rant about another. But that's par for the course. So I'm anxious to hear your thoughts on a number of them for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as far as sales go, there's a lot of factors. And unfortunately, it should just be based on merit, right? Like how good the comic is should directly affect what the sales of the comic are. That's just not reality, unfortunately. There's a lot of other factors, social media and the effects of these stories and characters in other forms, whether that be film or TV or what have you. All of that affects it. But if you just went on quality, I'm reading a lot of Marvel comics these days, too. And I got to say that overall, the quality of DC is probably better than Marvel. And then really the best comics being produced right now, better than Marvel or DC's independent, as we've talked about lately. So anyway, let's dive in. First book we're going to talk about is John Constantine, Hellblaizer, Dead in America, written by Spurrier. The art is by Aaron Campbell. Colors by Jordan Belair, letters by Aditya Bidikar. Right before we started recording, I was looking at the covers and I noticed, I don't know that we've ever mentioned this is a Black Label book. But what's interesting is I don't know that there's anything that's happened in this book that really would make it not canon or outside of. But I mean, it's a Sandman universe book, so I suppose all the Sandman universe are Black Label. Do they all have the Black Label? I don't know, to be honest, which is I should know. We've been reading them, but anyway, just to give you kind of the real broad strokes here. So, Constantine is in America with his son, who's deaf, and this other sidekick, I guess you'd say, this other person he's sort of mentoring as much as Constantine ever mentors anybody. And he's been recruited by Morpheus, been recruited by Sandman to recover his bag of sand. Last issue, they were able to recover 1 grain of sand, and Constantine thinks with the help of Swamp Thing, he'll be able to use sympathetic magic to use that 1 grain of sand to then track down the rest of the grains of sand. And this is all in the interest of saving his life. Supposedly, he's dead right now, and he's using magic to keep his body from rotting. So not the first time he's been dead, probably not the last time either, but that's kind of the premise of the story. So they recruited Sandman last issue, Swamp Thing last issue, but there's something blocking him from accessing what he needs to access to basically track down the other grains of sand. So we saw them. They were near the Rio Grande, near San Antonio last issue. So they're still in Texas. Texas football is king, if you're not aware. So they're in this other small town where it seems like there's a curse that's sort of preventing something that's very toxic in the town, that's preventing Swamp Thing from making a connection to the green, the life, and thus using that network to kind of track down the rest of the sand. So come to find out, it's these 6 football players, these 6 high school boys who are very popular. They're good at football, so they get away with murder, quote unquote. In this case, it's actually rape that they get away with. And although they're prosecuted and found guilty, they're all given like just a slap on the wrist, a suspended sentence. They don't even like get kicked off the football team. And the girl that was the victim disappears, and they're the law enforcement and a lot of the people in town are like, oh, she ran away, but really what happened is they killed her, right? We don't know exactly who, but they didn't want her causing a stink or whatever, and she's been killed, and she was dumped in some water in like a well in the town, and she's in a way sort of poisoning the town. The boys aren't able to sleep; they have nightmares or what have you, and so Constantine is aware of this, and it's interesting because it's sort of a twofold. It's that typical Constantine story where even though the guy's a bastard and very much motivated by self-interest, there's a part of him that will seek out justice as well. And when those two things coincide, even better, right? So he actually gives his son the grain of sand, and his son uses it because Constantine, first of all, he's dead, so maybe that might affect how he'd use the sand as well. But he also is aware of his own shortcomings when it comes to making a decision, and whether he might be making the right decision or the wrong decision based on that self-interest. So he gives it to his son, who's a little more, or maybe I'll say a little less cynical, a little more able to make an objective decision. And his son uses the grain of sand and its magical properties to sort of right the wrongs, if you will. So on the very final page, we see the six, it's a montage piece, and we see the six boys who were responsible for this all, and sometimes it's their parents, whatever. They're all making a decision to either leave, or it looks like one of them kills himself. Another is one of them looks like he doesn't care at all, actually, which he showed up throughout the issue. So, and that's kind of how he's portrayed. So you sort of get it. It doesn't really seem like the guilt gets to him at all. Whereas the others, it seems like they're at least trying to make amends. One's in church praying, one joins the military, one gets captured by the police for, something, having done something else. One moves away. So there's a little bit of a comeuppance for these six boys, and a little sense of justice, although the girl's dead. So, even had all these boys been killed, it's still not, in my mind, like two wrongs don't make a right. If they had all one killed, that wouldn't be great either. But by having this happen, at least some semblance of justice happen, it sort of lifts the curse from the town, and it allows Swamp Thing to make a connection to that green network, which then allows him to get Constantine and his two sidekicks back on the road along with Swamp Thing to try to track down the sand. So that's kind of the gist of the story. In terms of like being impactful or what have you, in terms of tone, I talked a lot about reading the previous issue of Cy Spurrier's John Constantine Hellblaizer Dead in America, and it really informing the way I see his Flash run. This, to me, wasn't as impactful as the previous issue, but it is in keeping with what Spurrier's trying to do. I think it's very, very well done. And yes, it is Black Label, but again, it doesn't feel very much out of keeping with the Constantine that we know from the main DC line. So I think in a lot of ways, Cy Spurrier is born to write on Constantine. And I'm enjoying a heck of a lot, which goes to show the guy's got talent. He's able to tell a fantastic story, but not every writer is suited for every character, right? Because everything that's working for me here are the things that aren't working for Flash. I just don't think that this kind of aesthetic type of storytelling, it doesn't really suit superhero comics, and specifically it doesn't suit the Flash, but it suits Constantine and the story that's being told with the supernatural and injustice and sort of commentary on evil. It suits that sort of aesthetic extremely well. So all credit to Cy Spurrier. The Aaron Campbell art is sufficiently moody. Jordi Belair colors are fantastic, helping to set that mood and establish it. I mean, this, again, little podunk Texas town in the middle of nowhere. And with the way it's rendered in line work and color, you get the sense that this is a town that's sort of dying. It's sort of going nowhere. And that helps to inform the story in terms of these six boys being kind of the stars of their high school football team. This is going to be like the peak of their life. Things are only going to go downhill from there. And you get that sense as well. So you can understand why it matters so much to them to be on the team, and matters to the town, how they do in football and what have you. So anyway, what were your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, I enjoyed this better than the third issue, probably because I don't have to have you explain it to me like you did last issue. But I really, really enjoyed this issue, and I thought this was very impactful for me, what I got out of it. I just love I've said before, I'm a sucker for a good metaphor, and boy, this is just ripe with them, and so many themes that you can just take out of this. This town was filled with dreams, and in fact, at one point, it's even mentioned here, John Constantine mentions that this town actually wished through their dreams. It dreamed of, from a speck of dust, they dreamed of having a harvest, and this town got a harvest. But then there was the poison. There was the incident with the girl. The 6 young men put a date drug. What do you call it? The girl, and then they raped her, and then she ended up dying, and it poisoned the spirit of the town. But the town still has dreams. Even the barmaid at the beginning, the dream she has is pride. She wants to have pride in her son, even though it's stained, even though her son was partook of the rape of this young girl. She dreams of having pride in her son. That they still have their dreams, but the dreams are tainted, and because of this one incident, and it's the collective guilt of the town that is poisoning the spirit of the town. It's not just that the girl's corpse is in a well, poisoning the well, but literally and metaphorically and spiritually. And as one old lady said to John Constantine, it's not a religious thing. This is, she wants to have pride, but pride cometh before the fall. We got all those 7 deadly sins, and this town is sort of like ripe with them. And it's everybody, right down to the deputy sheriff. This whole town has become corrupted, all because of one incident here, and it's so tragic. And then even at the end, where everyone moves on with their life, there's sort of a cleansing. Once you accept your fate, and the ending, by the way, I thought was really good. It reminded me of the ending of both of a Sandman story in the comics, but also the Sandman television series that was on Netflix, where the punishment to the town is that every member of the town will experience the last hour of the young girl's life as sort of punishment. And that's such a classic Morpheus punishment. And Morpheus even shows up at the end and, says, "Hey, what were you doing? You're supposed to be looking for the rest of the sand." And of course, what I really appreciate now, and that I failed to appreciate last issue until you sort of help me along with the story. But I like that really it's only on the outside they're looking for Morpheus's sand, but each one of those grains of sand is a story that Spurrier is telling. Individual stories are being told along the way, and that's what I really, really like. Fantastic stories that are episodic. You could just read this issue and get something out of it and not know the whole story. You could read last issue and get something out of it. And so they're episodic stories that but form part of a larger collective whole, which was frankly something that this is exactly what would make a great Sandman series, quite frankly, or Constantine series. Spurrier is just doing a really great job here. You mentioned the art's fantastic. Jordi Belair and the colors, setting the mood, the ambiance, the tone. Swamp Thing. I think one of the reasons why this is Black Label, I think this Swamp Thing is actually Alec. This isn't the new Swamp Thing. This is the old one, right?
I thought it was Levi. I thought they even
is it Levi? Okay, then I stand corrected. I couldn't remember which.
Sure, though.
Yeah, Levi Kamai or whatever his name is. But in any event, I really enjoyed this, and it's definitely a candidate for my pick of the week right out of the gate. But there's some other good comics we're going to be talking about coming up here. So, but no, I quite enjoyed this.
You mentioned each grain of sand could be a story. I mean, we're talking thousands of stories, tens of thousands, millions of stories, perhaps.
Exactly, yeah.
And, fit in that pouch. Because up through issue 6 has been solicited, but if you look at the solicitation for issue 6, it doesn't say final issue or end of the series. It says something happens with Swamp Thing, and it's a turning point for the series. So I think it's going more than 6, but I don't know if it's limited. I hate that they do that now, right? That was the thing that Marvel started because they thought, well, we don't want to tell people it's a limited series because then it gives them a reason not to buy it because they know it's going to end, whatever. I'm like, man, just tell us. Just let me know. I
Yeah.
like that. Anyway, up next we have Titans number 10. Tom Taylor's the writer, Lucas Meyer on art, Adriana Lucas on colors, Wes Abbott on letters. Dark Winged Queen Part 3. Interesting story. We have Trigon's son trilogy being manipulated by Trigon and Servilius, another one of his sons, into going and attacking Raven on Earth. He steals a weapon from Trigon, a weapon that Trigon ensorcelled to basically call out to his children. Even Servilius says to Trigon at one point, he's like, "Yeah, you ensorcelled that weapon, and even I was tempted to reach out and grab it. You know, it almost had me reaching for it." And the reason that Trigon is doing this is he's trying to motivate Raven. He doesn't think Raven's doing enough, or I should say, the demonic side of Raven, right, which is in charge of her body, and the actual sort of human side of Raven is trapped in the gem that she wears on her forehead. So she doesn't think that Trigon doesn't think that his demonic daughter is doing enough to make the Titans her slaves, not doing enough to sort of pave the way for him to go and take over the Earth. So he sort of sacrifices Trilogy, right? Like he tricks him into grabbing this weapon, going to Earth. He knows that his demonic daughter is going to be able to defeat Trilogy rather easily, and that's exactly what happens. Because what he realizes is that she'll likely trap Trilogy in a gem as well, just like the human side of Raven is. And when the demonic Raven does that, she says, "I see it now. I see how to build it. A crown for a dark queen." And we get this image where it's almost this crown of eldritch energy with the two gems, like the main gem in the center, and then the gem that she just created to trap Trilogy off to one side. And it looks like there's space for 3 more gems. So who might be trapped in there? Could it be some of the Titans? And it might even be more now that I look at it. It might be 5 more. It might be 3 more. It might be 5 more. It just depends because we're not looking at it directly. We're looking at it kind of off to the side. But you wonder, is she going to start capturing Titans and imprisoning them that will make a crown for a dark-winged queen, as it says? And how will that help pave the way for Trigon? So it's interesting enough. The problem that I have with it, and we've talked about it recently, when it comes to Raven, it's always got to be Trigon, right? And I get it. This is Tom King, really his first go around with the Titans.
Tom Taylor.
Sorry, Tom Taylor. And you want to give him a chance to tell the stories that he wants to tell, and I'm sure he's a Titans fan from way back. In fact, I know it. We'll talk about it when we get to the Nightwing issue. So he's got his Trigon story that he wants to tell, and I get it. But it's sort of like if you're going to write Batman, you get a chance to write one Batman story. I'm going to write a Joker story, right? But then these characters just feel like they're so overused. And at least, give Taylor credit here. He did do the Beast World thing, and it was, Temerians and Necrostars and whatever, and not Trigon. But the second big story is Trigon, with Teen Titans. So there's a little bit of a feeling for me about, like, been there, done that. I'd rather see new villains or different villains. Even if they'd kept it Dr. Hate, like, I don't know, like, Dr. Hate didn't have to be the demonic version of Raven. It could have just been its own character, and he could just have the disguise of Raven. I just think that would be a little more interesting. You still could even have the mystery of who Dr. Hate is. But anyway, it is Titans. It very much feels like Titans. But also because it's a DC Universe comic, it has to have Amanda Waller at the end, working with T.O. Morrow, building some sort of robot or android or what have you that's being powered by a mother box. So I'm sure that's tying in with Absolute Power, which is to come. So this was okay for me. Um, I gotta admit, as much as I tried to hold out hope in the beginning, you were the one that was like, "Man, this is so slow. I'm really not enjoying Titans." I was trying to play devil's advocate, but I've come around to I'm not enjoying this series. And it's not that it's bad. It's just underwhelming. Like it's not doing it for me. Um, and it's so interesting, right? And again, I'll talk about this more when we get to Nightwing. Tom Taylor has the ability to write some really impactful stuff, right? Like think about, even though it wasn't my favorite, I know you really enjoyed it. The Dark Knights of Steel, certainly the deceased storyline, big stakes, big swings, big events happening. You look over at Marvel, his Dark Ages series, again, big stakes. That's what I feel like this is lacking, and Nightwing to some extent as well. But again, we'll talk about that in a minute. It just, this Titan series just doesn't feel like it has high stakes. And I get it. Like Trigon's like, how much higher stakes do you want? Trigon's trying to take over the earth, but it doesn't come across as being impactful. Like it's a little, and maybe again, because it's a story that's been told so many times that it's just not landing for me, where, it just doesn't feel big and epic. And this is supposed to be the team that's replaced the Justice League. So you should feel like there's big stakes. You should feel like there's big danger. And I just don't get that impression with this. Now, don't get me wrong, the character work and the interaction between characters and everything, we know Tom Taylor does that really, really well, and that's no exception. Sort of the subplots of the Titans starting to be suspicious about something going on with Raven. Maybe she's not really Raven. What's going on? Like the build up to that feels interesting, but that's not enough to carry the whole story. This should feel big. This should feel epic. And it doesn't. It just doesn't for me. So anyway, again, not a bad comic, but it's not. I don't know. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it just feels like it's missing something. So I don't know. What do you think, Rocky?
Well, I think you put your whole hand on it, and and I agree with everything you said. This has been underwhelming from issue one, and it continues to be so. Beast World was a pleasant surprise, but it hasn't. I think Dr. Hate was infinitely more interesting until they made Dr. Hate uninteresting by making him just a glorified the Darkwing Queen of Raven. That's not interesting to me, and I'm not interested in this storyline. That's just me. Is it a terribly structured, written story? Well, no. It's just, I just find it. You nailed it. It's completely underwhelming. It just is. Now, having said that, let me say a couple of things I thought were cool moments in this issue. Raven, or rather the Darkwing Queen, which is the darker half, the Darkwing Queen admitted to Starfire that she manipulated Garfield to be happy. She manipulated Beast Boy and took away his guilt so that she intentionally manipulated Gar's emotions. So now Starfire knows that. Nightwing's going to know that, and I think the cat's out of the bag, quite frankly. Nightwing already suspected something's up with Raven in this issue, and now I think what Raven did, i.e. the Darkwing Queen, the way she brutally ripped off the arm of Trilogy and then sort of trapped him, caged him in another gem that she wore in her crown of cages, really shows just how she's conflicted. This Darkwinged Queen is conflicted. I think she wants to be liked by her fellow Titans, but yet at the same time she wants to control them. So she's trying to suck and blow at the same time, have her cake and eat it too, so to speak. And I think Tom Taylor's doing a good job of that characterization. I want to give him credit for that. I just don't find the stakes to be high enough. I'm just not interested in it enough. And I still maintain it goes back for me is that this really was. It was supposed to be Justice League level, and it doesn't. This feels like a story that I could have got 25, 30 years ago reading Titans back then, and which is all well and good, but this was supposed to feel different. This was supposed to be different. This was supposed to be the Titans elevating their game, and they still haven't gotten rid of the stain of being glorified environmentalists putting out forest fires in Borneo. That was a devastatingly badly. That was a stain on this entire run, and it just hasn't worked. And unfortunately, Beast World was not bad, but in any event, I want to focus on the positive here. I mean, it's not bad. It's just not bad, but it is sort of underwhelming. I actually feel the same way. We'll be talking about Nightwing in a bit. But it's funny. I don't feel like ranting about this or raving about this. This is just blah to me. The Titans. It's blah. It's one of the last. Every week when this comes out, it's one of the last comics I read. I don't have any interest in it. What's going to happen? I can predict probably what's going to happen. I'm not looking forward to what's going to happen next. Is there really any mystery as to what's going to happen with the Darkwing Queen? Well, no, we've seen this plot line before, and it's so disappointing, and you hit on it. Tom Taylor is incredible with DC characters. He's so good at thinking outside the box, but man, he's not only not thought out of the box for this Titan storyline on any of the plots, but everything's so conveniently wrapped up. He's got some good characterizations, but the plot line is just plodding and boring, and nothing really grips the reader. We shouldn't have to go to a Beast World event. There should be some excitement. We are 10 issues in of Titans here, and we need more excitement than what we're getting here, and we're just not getting it. And so, but okay, maybe that was a mini rant. So, but overall, this was meh.
Yeah, and it's too bad because again, the characterization really shines through. The most interesting thing about this, you mentioned it, Nightwing, and I mentioned it as well, the characterization interaction between characters, the Titans being suspicious of Raven and the way she's acting, and that it's only going to continue with what Darkwing Queen has admitted to Starfire. But it goes even further than that. Like you mentioned, like the things she's doing seeming to be brutal, whatever. And it goes to show you that at the end of the day, you can't hide your true nature, right? Like she is bad. Yeah. She's bad compared to Raven. So when she gets in battle, she's not going to be able to hold back. And it does harken back. And again, I don't blame Taylor for doing this, right? The books that he grew up reading, you can't help but be informed by them. Like if you go back and read the original classic Teen Titans run from Wolfman and Perez, and I loved it when the Titans realized something was going on and they showed panels, because they had planned this for over a year, and they showed pictures in panels, like subsequent panels of Raven and the way her the shape of her head and the shape of her face was changing over time. Her face was elongating, the widow's peak was getting sharper and what have you. And you could go back to the books those panels were pulled from and see the change, but it was so subtle because they'd made a little bit of a change each issue. And that's what this reminds me of, right? Like Raven turning evil. I mean, obviously it's a little bit different. It's been a full turn quickly, and it's the evil half of her rather than the influence of her father, like gradually taking over like it was back then, but her becoming more brutal, more violent. So yeah, hopefully he can stick the landing on this story and we can get something that feels fresh on the next one. We'll see. All right, up next we have Green Lantern War Journal number 8. This is from Phillip Kennedy Johnson as the writer, art by Montos, colors by Adriano Lucas, letters by Dave Sharp. Give us your thoughts on this one, Rocky.
Okay. I had a lot of fun with this one. I'm going to have a little bit of a mini rant here, but I'm going to have fun with this. This is John Stewart is in this he's lost in space-time, where he's fighting the dark star of the Fen, and he's fighting this what you think are the Radiant Dead. John Stewart is actually helping the Fen sort of fight off this attack by the children of Olgren, and the Olgren, it was the god that was in the Warworld saga for Superman, and the children of Olgren are attacking the Fen in this sort of other dimensional place. And there's this other old guy there named Baila Log, who apparently is there. He's brought a gravity storm with him, and the gravity storm is meant to contain the creatures of the Olgren. And even though so the gravity storm is dangerous, and John Stewart and the Fen have to stop the gravity storm, but if they stop the gravity storm, that will allow the creatures of Olgren to attack and destroy all light in the universe. And so it's a real conundrum. And so there's a lot of chaos going on. Meanwhile, back on Earth, they're looking for John Stewart. John Stewart, Lantern Shepherd wants to contact. He's contacting Guy Gardner and he's looking for Guy Gardner, and he communicates with Guy Gardner saying, look, Guy, he goes to Guy Gardner's house, and Guy Gardner, he tries to communicate with Guy Gardner, but Guy Gardner is actually looking for Lobo in the backup feature of Green Lantern, and Guy Gardner basically leads Lantern Shepherd, saying, "Look, I can't be there, but I can give you something that might help you find John Stewart." And in the closet of Guy Gardner's house, stuck to a pair of shitty underwear, is the Book of Oa. Like, and this is where, I mean, I'm sorry, but I got
his dirty socks and crusty underwear.
Yeah, I just thought this is hilarious. So, look, we have fantastic art by Montos here. Just really great art, great action sequences in this other dimensional place where John Stewart and the Fen are fighting the gravity storm and the creatures of Olgren. But we got this odd scenario where Lantern Shepherd is discovers the Book of Oa, and I just thought it was very odd that Guy Gardner. I mean, it's interesting that in the pages of Jeremy Adams' Green Lantern, we have a spare central power battery, hidden on Earth, and now also hidden on Earth apparently is the Book of Oa, hidden in Guy Gardner's closet. And I just thought, well, that's convenient, isn't it? So, man, I mean, the Green Lanterns of Earth are actually sitting pretty good. You got a power battery on Earth, and you got the Book of Oa. So this could potentially go somewhere. So this is actually, it's kind of funny. It feels almost strangely convenient, but it's simultaneously hilarious and kind of cool at the same time. Meanwhile, I can't ignore the fact that the storyline I'm loving is Ellie and Shirley Stewart, who's John Stewart's mother, who is suffering from Alzheimer's. She's being cared for by Ellie, the Green Lantern, the construct created by John Stewart to care for his mother. And it looks as if the Radiant Dead are trying to break into the house to presumably kill Shirley Stewart, John Stewart's mother. And I love the sequence. I love that. It's so cool how writer Phillip Kennedy Johnson scripts this, because Ellie, this construct, has protocols in place where, it's so cool. And it's exactly the type of protocols you would expect John Stewart to have. Of basically, it's like a bunch of Green Lantern, Green Berets, suddenly appear as constructs come to protect the house and to, prevent it from being attacked by the Radiant Dead. And it's really cool. Things are ramping up. So the Radiant Dead want to get in there and kill Shirley Stewart, or at least probably use her as a bartering chip to pull out John Stewart. John Stewart is in this other dimension with the fighting alongside the Fen to address the gravity storm and the creatures of the Olgren. And meanwhile, all this is building to a head, and we got the Book of Oa in Guy Gardner's closet. Which at the end, I'm sorry, but I thought Montos as the artist, I would like to ask the artist Montos did PKJ ask Montos to make sure when you draw the Book of Oa, make sure you draw Guy Gardner's shit-stained shorts stuck to the Book of Oa, or is that just something Montos just threw in for the hell of it? Anyways, I thought that's hilarious. And so I actually really enjoyed the issue. I was, because there's so much happening, and things are really building to a head here. And this is a really great comic. It's beautifully drawn, and I don't know. I'm waiting for this big battle, because at some point John Stewart's going to get out of this other dimensional place, and it just seems so weird. We got seemingly two completely different things. We got a gravity storm and the creatures of the Olgren in another dimension, which has nothing to do with the Radiant Dead. And then we got the Radiant Dead in our dimension. And I don't know how all this is going to come together. Is this gravity storm going to be utilized by John Stewart? Is he going to pull that with him when he eventually returns to our universe? When is this big final battle with the Radiant Dead going to take place? How is the Book of Oa involved? How is that going to be utilized? What secret is Lantern Shepherd going to read inside the Book of Oa that will help him against the Radiant Dead and to help him find John Stewart? These are the questions that we are led at the end of this issue. And I just loved it. I thought this was fantastic. And I picked that all up on the first read. So I enjoyed it. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this as well. The only thing I'm not sure on is the connection between the Children of Olgrin and the Radiant Dead. Like I think they are connected. I think the Radiant Dead are basically powered by the you know the Revenant Queen. We're told is the daughter of Olgrin, and so somehow she's using the power of her dead and vanquished,
Oh,
god,
I
Kryptonian
didn't
god.
remember that. Could you say
Yeah,
that again? The Radiant Queen is the daughter of what?
yeah, she's the daughter of Olgrin, like the
Oh,
Kryptonian
okay.
god that was defeated in Warworld. So is
Oh, okay.
that's what I'm not sure about. I'd love to
I
ask.
forgot that. Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to ask PKJ, and I'm sure I will at some point. Okay, so it, the daughter of Olgrin is using his powers, but because he's dead, the power that she's using from him is corrupting the beings that are infected that she's taking over, and so that's why they appear dead. Like I'm not exactly sure how that all works, which leads me to my next point. Like as much as I am enjoying this, um, you the world building that PKJ does, it's so involved and it makes sense, but he doesn't always have room to spoon feed you. You got to do some of the work yourself. So I do make some assumptions here, and that's kind of what I'm assuming about the power of the Radiant Dead. And then I always like to ask Phillip when I get a chance to talk to him, hey, did I get this right? Or is it something different? What have you? Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong. But it goes hand in hand with the next point I want to make, which is, you mentioned the the Radiant Dead that are still back on Earth trying to get to Shirley. And my thought is they do want to kill her. And I think that they realize that it's going to be really hard to defeat Jon Stewart kind of one-on-one, right? Like he's the builder. He finds a way, which is great, the way that that's been depicted by Philip Kennedy Johnson. So how can they defeat him? How can they weaken him to get to the point where he can be defeated? Well, if they kill his mother, I think that they're thinking, that'll put a big burden on him. Maybe he'll give up. The despair will take over, whatever. I sort of think that if they are successful, it's like be careful what you wish for. They're going to unleash the beast. I don't see Jon Stewart curling up a little ball and crying because mommy's dead. He's gonna go ballistic on them. He's
You got
gonna,
that right.
as the kids say these days, he's gonna go ham, right? He's gonna go crazy. So I don't know that that's the best plan. Which leads me to my next point, which, you and I were both a little bit critical when Jeffrey Thorne was writing the Green Lantern series and elevating Jon Stewart so much to this degree where he just felt like he was all powerful and he almost became a cliche and a plot device and what have you. So I like the way Philip Kennedy Johnson is building on what Jeffrey Thorne did. He doesn't just throw everything out, but this is not a Jon Stewart where, all it is just all he has to do is understand his powers as the builder and he's going to be able to defeat anybody and he's basically a god. That's not the case. But he is a builder and he is powerful and he is capable of doing things that other lanterns aren't or that we haven't seen before. Case in point, he quote unquote built Ellie to leave behind as a safeguard for his mother. And Ellie is this extension of John that has her own sentience and her own agency and is doing what she can to protect Shirley. That's really cool, right? Like that feels like you're making Jon Stewart special. You're making him, I don't want to say powerful, but you're giving him abilities that others don't have, which again kind of elevates him above a standard lantern and makes him different. Like one of the things that we complain about at times, especially for DC, is they create these family of characters, right? And I've talked about it before, and you can even go over to Marvel and look at Captain America, Spider-Man, that sort of thing. Every time you make another character that basically is like a sidekick or a legacy character of kind of a legendary character, you diminish the legacy because they're less special. They're less unique, right? There's so many lanterns, right? Where are there so many lanterns from Earth? I mean, we got Hal Jordan, we got Guy Gardner, we got Simon Baz, we got Kyle Rayner, we got Jon Stewart, we got Jessica Cruz. Did I forget anybody? I think that's all. But six, right? So each one of them is a little bit less for having the redundancy. And I think DC has, for the most part, done a good job of making them all sort of unique. But this is the way that you make Jon Stewart unique. You lean into the fact that he was an architect. You call him the builder. You give him these abilities to do things that others haven't. And they've been doing it with Hal as well. He's got a ring right now that seems to be different from everybody else. I'm enjoying what they're doing. And you're right about the art. Montos and the color work from Adriano Lucas is fantastic as well. You really feel like those constructs are glowing and they're coming off the page really, really well. But again, just with the world building and I think the space and the scope of the story that Johnson's trying to tell, not everything is spoon fed to you. So I am making some assumptions here. We'll see if I'm right or not. But I do appreciate that it feels very cosmic, but yet it feels intimate. Phillip and I talked about this exact thing when I had him on the show last, real briefly. He got to come on for like a 10-minute interview. But that's where the balance of the series works and why I'm enjoying it so much. This big epic scope, big universe stakes going on with the Radiant Dead and the Olgrin and what have you. But the intimate part of the story, where we connect and where we feel relatable to John, is the love he has for his mother, wanting to keep her safe, and to some extent, how is he going to be able to survive what's going on, because we know he was infected as well. So was that infection burnt out when he basically made himself a light construct, which is a really interesting concept as well? Or is there still in him some of that corrupted Olgrin power? Again, I'm assuming that that's why the Radiant Dead are what they are. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, this is a fantastic series. John Stewart's never been my favorite Lantern, maybe fourth or fifth on the list. But when I get stories like this, it elevates the character in my mind, and I'm like, man, I can get on board with the people that are like, yeah, John Stewart's my favorite Green Lantern. I could see why when it's done this well. And again, nothing against Jeffrey Thorne, but that just felt so much like tokenism, like fanboyish, that we said at the time. Which nothing wrong with that, having a little bit of that. You want to be invested, you want to care about the character you're writing about, but I think the scale swung, or the pendulum swung a little too far. I'm glad that Phillip Kennedy Johnson's finding that balance. So, all right. The aforementioned Nightwing 113, we talked about it a couple times, written by Tom Taylor and Marv Wolfman. Marv Wolfman helps on the writing for pages 20 through 21. And then Daniel Di Niculo and Bruno Redondo. Redondo draws those pages 20 through 21. They're the artists. And then Adriano Lucas on colors, Wes Abbott on letters. So this is Legacy issue number 300. I'm actually not going to say much about this issue. Because this is Legacy 300, and in my mind, this should feel epic, right? Just like we were talking about with Titans. And this feels more like this should be issue 299, leading up to something big. But, I don't fault Taylor necessarily, because what he does lean into is he leans into who Nightwing is as a character in terms of the way Dick Grayson impacts himself and the people around him, which there's value to that. But I'm more looking at it's issue 300. Like maybe the most famous issue 300 in comics is Amazing Spider-Man 300, first full appearance of Venom. And you think about how that was done and how much it's action and it's superhero comics and it's great art. And that's sort of what I'm looking for in quote unquote anniversary issue. I'm not looking necessarily for the touchy-feely type story. And that's what we get here, which again, there's nothing wrong with that per se. It's just not what I'm looking for in an issue 300. But what does happen is we do get, right at the end, we get Heartless, and there is a little bit of action throughout it. It's not all touchy-feely. There's a little bit of action throughout, and Heartless is clearly up in his game, and it's clearly leading into hopefully another Heartless arc, because that's a character in an arc that's been in Nightwing since the beginning of Taylor's run that has had zero resolution and very little forward momentum lately. So in my mind, the big climax of the Heartless story would have been perfect for an issue 300, as opposed to what we got. Now, again, there's nothing inherently wrong with doing an issue that's all up in the fields. And after Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon get the key to Bloodhaven, the keys to the city for their charity work, they go and celebrate at Marvin George's Pizza, which is a 24-hour pizza joint in Bloodhaven, and I did enjoy that. The Bruno Redondo art, clearly it's Marv Wolfman. If you've ever met Marv or know what he looks like, he's drawn as one of the owners. There's a picture of George Perez on the wall. And it's just all about the legacy of what these guys created. And it's a little bit of a meta conversation between Dick Grayson and Marv Wolfman. And I do enjoy that. I think give me the impact, give me the big climax of the, or not even necessarily the climax, could even be the buildup of the Heartless story, but find a way to put these Marv Wolfman pages in here, and I think that would have been the perfect 300 issue. But I don't know. I guess the timing just didn't work out, and that's what happens sometimes in comics. I get it, but talk about being underwhelmed by Titans. Really underwhelmed by this being an issue 300. I'm hard pressed to think of a recent milestone issue or anniversary issue that had less impact or had more of a kind of throwaway story than this. Grayson and Barbara Gordon get to the keys of the city. Okay, cool, but you could remove the story from Nightwing continuity and it would not change a thing, not one thing, one thing. An issue 300, a milestone issue, should matter, and this, in the long run, this doesn't. It's very forgettable. So, other than the Wolfman scene, which is, like I said, very, very heartfelt, especially with George Perez no longer being with us. But anyway, incoming rant, Rocky. Is this the issue?
Well, no, not necessarily. It's for another one, but I could rant a little bit about this. First, I love the tribute to Marv Wolfman and George Perez, but I actually am a little bit irritated by it at the same time. Why is George Perez dead in the issue? He's dead in our world. Why not make him alive in the world of comic books? One thing about DC Comics is, it's like Batman said when Martian Manhunter was killed prior to Final Crisis. What do we pray for? No, we pray for a resurrection, which always comes in comics. Why is George Perez dead on it? Why is his picture on the background? He should be alive, and he should be partying at the pizza place. It's a minor nitpick, but it actually bothered me a little bit. Was it touching? Yes, it was. I think Marvin George's Pizza, yes, that's fantastic. It was good to see Marv Wolfman there. George should be alive in the history, in the DC universe, just like Stan Lee should always be alive in the pages of any particular Marvel comics whenever it comes out, including the movies. Again, this was another, there's some nice character moments, as there always is, but, there's that old expression, better to talk, even a bad story, if people talk about it, there's no such thing as bad publicity if people are talking about it. I'm almost wishing for a badly written Taylor Thomas so I can rant about it. This is just meh again. Nothing happens. There's a lot of heart in this issue, but also, and I guess I am ranting a little bit, didn't Dick already get a key to the city? Like in issue 1 or 2? Like, I'm pretty sure he did that already. Now he's getting a second key. I'm being serious. I'm pretty sure he got one already. So once again, this is another love fest for him, and he feels forced because it's the 300th legacy issue. Have something happen. There's a lot of heart in this issue, yes, but we've been getting all kinds of heart. And then, ironically, I suppose we can call it ironic that Heartless, in an issue filled with heart, shows up on the final page saying that, now that he's at his heights, this is the highest way that Tom Taylor can elevate Dick Grayson. Now, finally, we can, bring him back down to earth and take his heart away. And he already doesn't have he's afraid of heights. We still don't know that's still a mystery. I think it's the worst kept secret that, at least it's not just my theory, but many people's theory, that this is leading toward Dick and Barbara Gordon getting married, or maybe a proposal, that when Dick gets his mojo back and is no longer afraid of heights and he can leap again, he's going to take the leap and propose to Barbara Gordon. Is that the big thing leading into September? A revitalized DC universe, or whatever the case might be, even though technically it's a new Ultimate line. That news broke today, and the mainstream DC line is going to continue apparently as is, much to some people's disappointment. But in any event, this was meh for me. Again, this was not, this is just okay. It's just okay. I mean, it's just, I mean, again, another Dick Grayson love fest. Nothing happens. Nothing happens that really interests me. It's just everybody talking about how great it is to have Dick around. Well, okay. I mean, we knew before the series began that the most revered character in the DC universe was Dick Grayson. That was rammed home in Dark Crisis. And now this is like the, issue 113. This started, what was it, issue 82? I mean, it started off really great, but we keep getting the same theme over and over and over again. Dick's a great guy. Dick's a great guy. Dick's a great guy. And by the way, Heartless still isn't caught yet. This is one of the most longest decompressed stories in a while. And again, I feel that this is, in the general scheme of things, of all of Tom Taylor's stories, and I'm including a lot of the Marvel comics that Tom Taylor's written that I've enjoyed. This one, his Titans and Nightwing just seem to be, they're not bad. They're just really kind of uneventful. They're just kind of boring. And that's the worst. Sometimes being boring is a worse sin than being bad, because at least I can remember a bad comic. A boring one, I'm going to forget. But again, so that sounds harsh, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, a couple things. You might have to put an explicit tag on this YouTube video if you're talking about liking to have Dick around. And the other thing that I will, there is a backup story I should also mention here. It's a silent story, arts by Howard Porter, very recognizable as Howard Porter art. Michael Conrad is the writer, and it's fine, but again, it's nothing that's like super memorable. So take that for what you will. The other thing, you're 100% right. He did get a key to the city previously. I'd forgotten that. So the only thing I can think is maybe this time it's the key to the back door. I don't know. I don't know. Got to keep women in their place. So he gets the key to the front door, and now he gets the key to the back door, and Barbara gets the key to the back door as well. So
yeah.
All right. Anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Catwoman number 64, written by Tini Howard. Carmine Di Giandomenico is the artist. Veronica Gandini on colors. Lucas Gattoni on letters. Continuing her 9 lives story with part 6 here. What'd you think?
I really don't have much to say, but I'm compelled to say something about the cover. Cover A is absolutely gorgeous. I love this Catwoman astronaut suit, sexy Catwoman on the cover in space. These are the types of covers that I love, and it checks off all the boxes. It's relevant to the content of the story. It's sexy. It has and it's a gorgeous cover, and it's on cover A, and it's the cheapest cover, and it's the best cover, and we don't need a cardstock. I mean, you don't need all the fancy cardstock and all this other variant and ratio crap. Put your best cover on cover A, make it the cheapest comic, and even on the cheapest printing paper as far as I'm concerned, because nowadays all of us comic collectors, guess what we do? We bag and board. We don't need cardstock. We don't need all the fancy bells and whistles, etc., etc. My rant is done in that respect. So I love the cover. Now, it's Tini Howard continues the 9 lives story. I'm not sure how many parts this consists of. I'm assuming it's probably going to consist of 9 parts. That would be consistent with the 9 lives title. Now, and this issue consists of what basically Selina wants to travel. She somehow smuggles her way onto a rocket ship to travel into space with the goal of essentially destroying a satellite, so that the satellite will no longer be able to track her, because the satellite contains a surveillance system that all of the various people that she's pissed off in the previous 6 issues, they won't be able to track her, and she'll be able to take out yet another person she's got on her 9 lives bucket list. That's it in a nutshell. And really, while she goes up into space to incapacitate this satellite, the demolition crew, the demolition team of all people, who I'm trying to find them here. They're the demolition team. The last time we saw the demolition crew, I think we saw them didn't we see them in the Peacemaker series? Peacemaker tries hard. I think they were on that. And
I thought we saw them recently in a Green Lantern. Like, those guys haven't shown up in years, and then they're like in 3 books over the span of like 3-4 months. They've
Yeah.
shown up to their copyright must have almost been up.
Yeah, and I actually don't mind them showing up here, and I think Tini Howard is, I as I said before, I really like the concept that she's taken to play with. She's playing with this concept here, and she's having fun with it, and she clearly has a goal that she's working toward. There's the pink flamingo character, and then there's the other characters that she's created. I can't even remember their names. They all want to conspire against her, and I think that they're even in. I think they make an appearance at the beginning of this issue because they want to. They want to take her out. So they all want to kill the cat. There's the flamingo, and then there's these other characters whose names I forget.
Viceroy and Saint Anna or something like that.
Yeah, none of them have really. I mean, they're okay. I wish that these other characters. She's created new characters to be threats to Selina, which I think was a mistake in the storyline. She should use existing DC characters that we already know have some history and that have some gravitas and to them, because these don't feel particularly threatening, particularly how Selina took them out. And so, but now, so this is a very this felt like a little bit of a decompressed issue because Catwoman just goes into space and then she comes back and she basically dies. Well, she dies at least once re-entering Earth's atmosphere, and her face is melted off, and she presumably we know she was clearly killed at the end of this, but we know she's likely still alive because she's got to deal with her cat god there that's going to keep reviving her for some purpose, not just. So there's two things going on here. I think there's Selina's 9 lives or mission to take out to cross off certain things on her bucket list of things she wants to do, since she's essentially immortal, and then there's possibly an agenda that the cat god is given her, that I'm not sure the gods might have an agenda, because next issue is teased to be there's a deal with the gods. And so I do like what Tini Howard I got to give her props for she by all accounts, she's a good soldier. She gets her work done on time. She submits her work. And she has some really cool concepts. Her execution is a little wonky. And I think it could be better, but I do want to give her some props. I'm still wondering where the Shazam powers are with Selina. I guess she just had those temporarily. There's some of the actions of Selina seem to be a little bit off. Sometimes the characterization seems a little off. I wish the art was better on the series. I wish it was more sexy. I'm not a big fan of the style of art, to be if I'm brutally honest. I wish it was assigned a better artist. I'm not a big fan of Giamonico, of his particular style, but overall, I am intrigued by this, and I'm actually really curious to see how this is going to end, and ultimately if there's any plans for Selina to return to Gotham City, and when she does, if there's going to be any reunion with Batman. Although maybe that's completely off the playing field now. But all in all, I mean, I thought this was kind of a meh issue this week, but I might buy two issues, and I haven't done this in a while. I really, really love that cover. I love that space cover. It's my pick of the week for cover of the week. If we had a cover of the week, this would be it. But what do you think of the issue?
Yeah, David Nakayama cover, absolutely fantastic. Well, a couple things. First of all, as Selina was going into space, she should have talked to Bruce. He would have told her how you get from space, jumping from the moon, jumping from the aircraft, back down to Earth without dying. He could have told her. Wouldn't have had to crash land in the aircraft. Because, yeah, I think she had 3 lives left, but she's lost multiple. You look at the final scene with her burnt body laying there in the wreckage of this aircraft. There's 8 black marks, so she's down to her last life. But she's laying there burning, so is she going to use up that last life as well? Obviously, something about gods is being teased in for the next issue. So yeah, she's probably dead in that picture, that scene, and is going next scene. Issue is probably going to start with a scene where we're talking to the cat god or whatever. But what I do appreciate, all kidding aside, with Batman jumping from space and living, it does show that, yeah, you don't mess around in space. It's kind of my point with Batman. He couldn't have been able to do that. Shows the danger. She lost multiple lives by undertaking this mission. It's a fun issue in terms of action, and it's hard to have anything but fun when you're reading about the Demolition Squad. They're so bumbling, and so yeah, I did appreciate this. It made sense in terms of why Selena was going up there and why she was doing what she was doing. But I also do agree with you about Tini, her storytelling being a little bit uneven at times. And I also agree with you about the art. I mean, I said this a ton of times. The first time I ever saw Dijon Domenico's art, he was on the Rebirth era Flash with Joshua Williamson when Josh took over that title. And it really works for Flash, even though I'm still not a huge fan of his style. It works for Flash. It works for showing movement or what have you. But for just standard storytelling, when you're writing or you're drawing a comic where somebody doesn't have super speed, I don't think it works as well because it's just not a clean art style. So yeah, and the other thing is, that, man, we haven't even had a consistent artist. I don't think anybody's done more than one or two issues in a row. So I feel bad for Tini that she hasn't been able to have a regular artist on the book to kind of establish a consistent look, because I think that would go, um, or at least it would help. I was going to say go a long way, but I think, and I don't want to make that assumption, but I think it would help in terms of giving it the storytelling a more consistent feel. Because when we look at what Ram V did, and I know it's not always fair to compare eras here, but Ram was on Catwoman right before Tini, and he had Fernando Blanco, and Blanco did almost every issue, and it really helped establish this consistent look. Right, it felt like a Michael Mann movie, and consequently, Ram V's story felt very crime noir, so it worked. It worked hand in hand. Tini hasn't had that advantage, so I'm not pointing fingers or whatever at DC editorial, but who's ever making the decision over at DC hasn't done Tini any favors by constantly swapping out artists. So yeah, that's tough when you're writing something to have that feel of consistency, and just when you start getting comfortable with an artist, oh, different artist, different artist, different artist. At the end of the day, maybe DC just doesn't care about Catwoman. I don't know. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Batman, Superman, World's Finest, written by Mark Waid. Dan Mora is the artist. Tamara Bonvillain on colors. Steve Wands on letters. So last week, the last time we reviewed DC's World's Finest, Batman, Superman, it was the 2024 annual, and it was a Joker and Lex story. And then the next day, Rocky sends me a message, and he's like, "Hey, we forgot to review the backup for that." And I was like, whoops, didn't even know there was a backup. I guess that's what I get for not continuing to scroll when we're going through the digital press copies. But yeah, there was a backup, and it was only like 4 or 5 pages. But it was a continuation from the annual of these mites, right? Like you have Mxyzptlk as sort of the fifth dimensional imp that always gives Superman a bad time. You have Batmite that is related to Batman, giving him a bad time or whatever. And then come to find out, there's one for Flash, there's one for Green Arrow, there's one for Green Lantern. There's all these different versions that are these sort of mischievous, magical beings from the fifth dimension. And in that annual, we saw somebody was out to kill them, and come to find out, all the villains have might or imp counterparts as well. And we don't know who necessarily is pulling the trigger until at the end of this issue. It appears to be the Joker. But
Joker might.
Yeah, the Joker might, some imp that's the Joker, although he doesn't. I mean, it's hard to tell from the context because there's no other beings on the page, but he looks more full size than a lot of these other imps or whatever. But supposedly he's behind it. He's sending the villainous imps out to team up with their appropriate villains to try to take out the heroes. I guess we don't really know the motivations or what have you. So. That's what's going on here. Dan Mora is the perfect artist to tell this story. All that being said, Mxyzptlk might be my least favorite Superman villain. It's between him and Bizarro, actually. But Mxyzptlk might be, right below. Only because at the end of the day, it's hard to do something new and fresh. And you're like, well, wait, this imp can do anything. How can it not be like fun and big stakes or whatever. He makes buildings come alive, or he creates a giant balloon or whatever. The storylines always feel so ludicrous and Silver Agey to me. And at the end of the day, it's magic, and we know that Superman's going to trick him into saying his name backwards, and he's going to disappear. So it's just not my particular cup of tea. I don't enjoy it. I can understand why he existed and why he was created, and why back in the day the stories that and the issues that he was in sold really, really well, because it is very Silver Age. It is very fantastical and whatever. And back when comics were really aimed at kids from like 7 to 12, that really fires the imagination of kids that age. But for me, meh. So I appreciate Mark Waid taking on a classic idea like Mxyzptlk and the other fifth dimensional imps, but ultimately this is one of those situations where I'm just kind of gonna read along and wait till the story's over to get to something a little more consequential in my mind. And you mentioned it, the absolute line and absolute power and what have you, which I guess we'll talk a little bit at the end. But yeah, how long Waid might stay on this. We talked about before when Absolute Power was announced, he's got like 27 issues that he's writing over like a 3-month period. I mean, I'm sure he's working on them now. So maybe he's going to keep up with World's Finest, or maybe World's Finest is going to end, or maybe another writer will come on. I'm not sure. But this is a well put together comic, and the Dan Mora art is fantastic, and there's some great visual moments. But in terms of the story itself, yeah, it's just not my favorite premise, basically, because I'm not a fan of the whole fifth dimensional thing. But that's just a personal thing for me. So, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
I enjoyed this. This was, I mean, when I started reading comics in the mid 1970s, I mean, these were the types of stories that I would just love, and it reminds me of that. And I should say that despite DC having some sales woes, a consistently very decent seller has been World's Finest. It continued to rise in the ranks, and it's held fairly steady. And there's a reason for that. Is every one of these stories, to Mark Waid's credit, is that it's relatively self-contained. These are not only are they easy to read stories, but they're not brainless stories. They're not one-dimensional. They're in this case they're fifth-dimensional. Budding. All right. In any event, and they're fun and they're funny. And Mxyzptlk, because that's how I always say it, and I'm sure it's pronounced wrong. And then Batmite, and we got a whole fifth dimension of a bunch of imps. Now apparently it's the Joker imp embarking on our dimension. So many great moments here. We got Paris Mite, who at the end, in a very inspired scene, manipulates space-time to create, to make Superman, Batman, and Robin basically two-dimensional, taking them out of the third-dimensional plane and making them two-dimensional. Sort of. So it's very inspired. How is Mark Waid going to script a battle? How does a two-dimensional being fight a three-dimensional being? I don't know that. Mark Waid's going to show us next issue. That's kind of cool. I like the creativity there. And of course, there's Batmite. Of course, he's wondering how is this? Are we going to solve this? I love how Batmite uses his powers to create suits for Superman to protect them against magic, and how Robin in this issue wants to get superpowers. So Mxyzptlk gives Robin some superpowers, and only Robin discovers, much to his chagrin, that it's very hard for him to use supervision to use his powers, because with supervision, apparently you see everything all at once, and it becomes overwhelming. A little bit of a reminder of the Man of Steel movie, where Zod becomes overwhelmed initially with all his super senses. And so there's some nice callbacks here to other aspects of the DC universe, and just very well done. And then, of course, you get the fantastic art by Dan Mora, Bonvillain on the colors. This really is something that it works really well. The intimidating look of Batman when the way he looks at Mxyzptlk. and even there's some sorrow and sadness here. Part of me was initially upset that maybe I wanted Mxyzptlk and Batmite to maybe be unique of their own, and not necessarily have an entire world where, having every single superhero in the DC universe have a fifth dimensional counterpart. I had mixed feelings about that, to be honest. But when I get stories like this, I kind of get it. On the one hand, I don't want all of them to be corrupt. But it's kind of interesting when you think that Yes, Patelik and Batmite, especially Mixie there. I always he's Superman, one of the villains of Superman. To think of him as almost the good guy in the fifth dimension, along with Batmite, is kind of a little bit of a mind screw to me, but it's kind of funny in a way, in a twisted kind of way. And anyways, I liked it. It's and I like that movie, that opening page with the, where Batmite is making them all look like it's a movie, it's cinematic. I mean, Mark Waid, Dan Mora is having a lot of fun with this, and especially in this issue, I think Dan Mora must have had a lot of fun drawing all these issues. And I'd really be interested to know how much of this is Dan Mora, or did Mark Waid give him some of the ideas for these images, because they're just inspired, and there's some really epic pages, which you mentioned, which just really stand out. But of course, that's one of the reasons why this series has resonated with fans and remained as popular as it has been.
Yeah, the only comment I'll say on what you said about a callback to the Man of Steel movie, the Zod scene where he's overwhelmed. I don't think that's intentional by Mark Waid. We all know how he feels about that movie.
Yeah, he doesn't like that movie.
Like myself,
Superman doesn't kill, right?
He would never call back to that film ever. So anyway, let's move on. Superman number 13. This is part 2 of House of Brainiac, Last Sons, written by Joshua Williamson. Rafa Sandoval is the artist. Colors by Alejandro Sanchez. Ariana Mera on letters. Man, this is so much fun. This House of Brainiac story, which is going to lead into Absolute Power. We get a little more context about what Brainiac might be up to. Meanwhile, Superman goes and hunts down Lobo, who's trapped on Earth, much like Green Lantern was. Hal Jordan and Sinestro were recently trapped on Earth because of the United Planets quarantine. So he recruits Lobo, wants to find out. Once he finds Lobo and learns from Lobo, Lobo had no idea that these other Zarnians had been resurrected by Brainiac, being used by Brainiac. He clearly, the whole thing about don't meet your heroes with this general, what is his name, Choclo or whatever his name was.
Chakal.
So Chakal. So he's curious to meet him, how that might all play out. So as unlikely as it is, it seems like we're going to get a Superman Lobo team up. Meanwhile, on Brainiac's ship, like I said, we're getting a little more context and clues about what Brainiac's up to. Clearly, there's something wrong with him. He appears to be breaking down. And the part 1 of House of Brainiac that ended in Action Comics ended with this splash page showing all these different versions of Brainiac from throughout the multiverse. And we're seeing those versions as well. But it seems like the Brainiac of our world, Brainiac Prime, as it were, is kind of the main Brainiac that's in charge. And he has Luthor there as well that he's captured. And Luthor, perhaps showing some humanity for once, agrees that he'll betray Earth and he'll help Brainiac with whatever Brainiac needs, as long as Brainiac leaves his daughter alone. Because we know Lena obviously has connections to Brainiac as well. She's got the 3 little dots on her forehead also. So this is setting up to feel big and epic. And remember what we were just talking about with Nightwing number 300, where it just didn't feel like an impactful story for an anniversary issue or a milestone issue. Yeah. This could 100% be like a Superman 300. Like this feels big. This feels like it's building to something. And that's not to say you have to put the resolution of the story or the climax to the story, or even the beginning of the story in an issue. Because really, we got the beginning of the House of Brainiac story in that Action Comics issue I was just referencing. This is part 2, but again, it feels big enough and impactful enough, and there's enough moments that you feel like it could sort of suit an anniversary type issue. But this issue 13. So again, it's not always possible just based on editorial timelines, which I get. But when you specifically go and call it out as a legacy number 300 anniversary issue, whatever, you should make an effort to try to make it feel impactful. But anyway, that's enough about Nightwing. This is fantastic. The art is gorgeous. I cannot wait to see what happens. It's still not clear to me how this is going to lead into Absolute Power, with Waller stealing the powers of everybody. And in a way, I kind of wish that they hadn't said that was a thing, right? Because I want I want to be able to just read this and enjoy this without having that thought in the back of my mind. Well, how does this tie into absolute power? Maybe it'll become more apparent as it goes on, but like this feels, as much as we enjoyed the first two 6-issue arcs in terms of trade, but really it was one big story that Williamson did in Superman. He's elevated his game, man. Like this is, and so many things to enjoy about that first arc. Him bringing back classic Superman villains that we hadn't seen in a long time. Like we even got Terra Man, which was awesome, in the flashback or the issue where Superman went back in time. But we had Silver Banshee, we had Parasite, and we had new characters with Farm and Graft. But I mean, that's the way you do it. If you're trying, and it's not that you always want to give fans, what they want or tell stories from a perspective of fan service, but it just goes to show if you're a talented writer, you can bring in classic elements that fans love and haven't seen in a while instead of bringing in the same old characters, Joker. You can go back, and these characters have rich history. They have a lot of villains you can go and bring back and tell great stories, and that's what Williamson's done. I would say the only classic character we haven't seen so far, and I just don't think we're going to see him anytime soon because I don't know how you fit him into this cosmic Brainiac story. We haven't seen Toyman, but other than that, I feel like we've seen a lot of the classic Superman villains, and I am totally here for it. And the fact that we're seeing him in new and different ways. A lot of times I complain about DC trying to make villains into heroes. I wouldn't go so far as to say they're made Parasite into a hero. They're trying to work with them. Silver Banshee does seem to be redeemed, but she was never an out-and-out villain to begin with. It was more the curse that she was afflicted with. But, I love her dating Jimmy Olsen. Livewire definitely is not redeemed. She's here in these pages, her same old selfish self. And then, Brainiac, just fantastic. Great job by the whole creative team. This feels like a big event. And one last thing I'll mention is you can do a big event and it doesn't have to be in something separate. It doesn't have to be its own miniseries. It doesn't have to have those anthologies that we've come to dislike as tie-ins to events. Shows you can just do it in the pages of the books themselves, which that's what we're getting here with Action and Superman, with Williamson writing both series right now. So, I loved this. It was fantastic. What do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, I thought it was well done too. I do have some nitpicks which I'll get into, but first I want to say how I can't believe, how much different this is than Dark Crisis with that Williamson scripted, where every issue of Dark Crisis he seemed to contradict the previous plot point he made in the previous issue, and it just drove me nuts. Here it's been consistent. I don't know what it is, because in many ways this is as sophisticated and intricate series of plots and subplots in this Brainiac story as existed in Dark Crisis, and yet he's keeping all the ducks in a row, and he's done a really good job of building the tension, and it's working. Like, I'm really excited as to see where this is going. Now, what I find interesting, one of my nitpicks is Lobo. Now, I love Lobo, and I love how the scientists were saying we finally found a way to crack the quarantine that the United Planets imposed around Earth, and we got it. We've created small enough space vehicles for you guys to shoot right through the quarantine. And when Superman asks, "What kind of space vehicles?" and the next scene when it shows them on a bike on those space motorcycles, of course Williamson is going to have Lobo and Superman on cool super bikes. That's just an awesome fanboy moment. And I love that. To me, that's exactly what you would expect to do. Now, having said that, the one little nitpicks I have is, unless history's been rewritten, and maybe it has, because my recollection sometimes gets wonky, but I thought Lobo was the sole survivor of his planet because he destroyed his planet he destroyed it. He destroyed it. He wiped out Zarni. He destroyed the planet. And so I don't see, I would think that no one mentions that here. General Jakal, when he talks about how badass the bad blood gang of Zarnian, these Zarnians, this gang called it translates into bad blood, led by General Shakal. These are such badasses. To me, General Shakal should be terrified of Lobo. I mean, Lobo is the one that should have the reputation. He destroyed the planet. But no mention of that is made here, and I find that funny. The other thing is, I think Lobo is way too touchy-feely here. Like when he talks about Lobo when making comments to Superman about, it's one thing to say, okay, Superman, I've never seen you this upset before. Well, actually he has, but that's besides the point. I'll let that go. Okay, Superman is upset, but when Lobo starts talking about, yeah, he's got kids now and he knows how it feels, and you really got to get, Lobo is giving Superman a speech on how to deal with his anger. I mean, come on. Lobo is not the type of guy to engage in male bonding, to tell another guy how to get in touch with his. I thought, to me, I sort of chuckled at that a little bit. But again, that's a nitpick, but I did find it kind of funny. Lobo. Remember the last time. Remember what Lobo did to his daughter? Lobo tricked his daughter to replace him in a prison planet. In that Marika Tamake Lobo and Crush series, Lobo's not a touchy-feely guy. I mean, he's an a-hole to his own daughter, for God's sakes. And anyways, I thought it was kind of funny. But, again, that I call it a nitpick because that's what it is. It's just a nitpick. I still really enjoyed this issue, and I even enjoyed ranting a little bit about it in that one small aspect because the art's so fantastic. Lobo is still Lobo at the end. He attacks General Chakal. He's the main man. You got to beat the main man. He gets that. Williamson gets the essence of Lobo. Other than I think he's a little bit too, that minor nitpick, and I think it really works. I really enjoyed the moments with Brainiac. I'm a little bit confused while Lex thinks he can negotiate with Brainiac. Lex is going to give Brainiac Superman in return for him saving his daughter. The reality here is Brainiac, I suspect, could have taken down Superman to begin with. I think Brainiac is there's multiple clones of Brainiac. We know that. There's different versions of Brainiac on that ship, or at least different iterations of him. I don't know if Brainiac really needs Lex Luthor to take out Superman at this point. And I give credit to Williamson because Williamson's done such a good job of building up the threat of Brainiac. I'm thinking to myself, why does Brainiac need Lex? I mean, and the other thing is Lena is so important. Why would Brainiac? I don't see Brainiac agreeing. I mean, clearly Brainiac is going to be manipulating Lex. Maybe Lex has a trick up his sleeve, but I think Brainiac's got the upper hand here, and I think that Luthor's going to find out the hard way. So I'm really curious to see how Williamson's going to play that out, and I find myself having trust in Williamson because he's built up so much trust in me in this Superman story from the very beginning, from the Superman series. Full props to him. He's done a really good job here. And then at the end, I love how Kara, it's a reference to Kara's past experience with Brainiac, where she manipulates the tech only to accidentally shrink her and Connor down to microscopic size, which of course is relevant because of course that happens. Brainiac does have that type of tech because he shrinks down to bottle cities of various cities across the galaxy. So it's just a wholly creative issue across the board, multiple fronts, fantastic art by Sandoval Sanchez on the colors. Very well done. Definitely in the pickings for pick of the week for me.
So you remember back in the day when something didn't make complete sense in a Marvel comic, you could send in an explanation that made sense and you get a no prize. Let me try to no prize it for these Zarnians not being afraid of Lobo. Because you're right. He did destroy Zarnia, so you would think that they would either be afraid of him or be really pissed off at him, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But that doesn't appear to be the case. But we know that Brainiac has the ability to manipulate and clone or what have you. I was never quite clear, and maybe I'm just not remembering it, and it was spelled out. So was it sort of a bottled city from Zarnia that Brainiac got, and then he is enlarging them back up into size, and these are the Zarnians that survived, and we just didn't know that Zarnians survived? Or is it a case where he had Zarnian DNA? I think for some reason it seems like that's what happened. He had Zarnian DNA, and he grew these Zarnians.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. That would explain it then.
Yeah.
Or
So
if he shrunk the city of Zarn, if he shrunk a city of Zarnia before Lobo destroyed it, that would be
yeah,
another explanation. But
yeah, there
yeah,
could be multiple. Either they don't know that Zarnia is destroyed, or
yeah,
if Brainiac manipulated their memories, or if they're clones, then he may not have allowed that memory or what have you. So yeah, I don't know. In
yeah,
my mind, I can work that out. As far as him being a little touchy feely, yeah, I do agree with you. That did feel a little. It took me out of the story a little bit. I was like, really? After what he did to Crush, he's gonna mention, oh, you know how it is when you're a dad. What, he doesn't care. So yeah, that was a little bit. But I'm also not surprised. Josh does lean into that sort of stuff. You can read his flash run to see that. So, but yeah, I mean, you can overlook, as you said, you can overlook those minor nitpicks because the story and the art are so fantastic. Okay, up next we have Wonder Woman #8. It's written by Tom King, Daniel Sampere on art, Tameya Mori on colors, Clayton Cowell on letters. Oh man, I absolutely love this issue. So last issue, much to some people's chagrin, we had a little bit of an interlude, if you will. It gave Daniel Sampere a chance to have a month off and get caught up, or maybe work ahead a little bit. So we had Wonder Woman and Superman searching for a birthday present for Batman. But if you recall, back in on issue 7, or issue 6 rather, at the end, Grail and Wonder Woman fight, and then after Wonder Woman defeats Grail, she falls over, she passes out, and so this one opens up with Wonder Woman being the prisoner of the Sovereign. So after that fight with Grail, they went and they got Wonder Woman, and she is tied to this post in the layer of the Sovereign by the lasso of lies, which she finds to be unbreakable. And it's interspersed with the story is interspersed with scenes of the Sovereign trying to convince Wonder Woman to give up, to bow before him, to worship him, to acknowledge him as her superior, as it were. To say, as a woman, she's subservient to the Sovereign. And the Sovereign's making some comments, giving us some context on him about his father, I guess the previous Sovereign, although it doesn't seem like. So is this guy 200 years old? But anyway, traumatic childhood, very much a strict father that was abusive and that sort of thing, sort of cliche, as it were. And then interspersed with that is kind of this sort of fantasy world that the Sovereign is using the lasso of lies to sort of implant into Wonder Woman's mind. And it goes back to the perfect time if these are the gender roles that you want to reinforce, right? The sort of the era that the Sovereign seems to be stuck in, didn't move past, the 1950s, where Diana is in the floral print dress and she's expected to be a really good cook and clean the house and have dinner on the table for her husband Steve Trevor when he comes home, and just be that June Cleaver, right, from Leave It to Beaver, just be that sort of woman, have that sort of role. And she's not very good at it. She keeps burning dinner. It doesn't taste very good. She's saying the wrong thing. Steve's calling her out on it because that's not who she is. That's not who Diana is at all. So eventually she's reminded by a vision of her mother that the lasso of lies is Amazonian in and of itself, but her belief that it's unbreakable, it's only unbreakable because of that belief, basically. So, if you believe you're stronger than the lasso, you will be able to break it. And that's how she is able to break it, much to the surprise and chagrin of the Sovereign. So we'll see where it goes from here. But I really like that Taylor is leaning into these. Taylor,
you
here I
mean
go.
King? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, King. Here I go. When we're talking about Taylor books, I'm saying King. Or we're talking about King books, I'm saying Taylor. But yeah, Tom King is reminding us of sort of these philosophical differences between the Sovereign and between Wonder Woman. And I think at the end of the day, if I can sort of prognosticate here, it's going to be Wonder Woman's mercy. That's the only thing that's going to allow, and her compassion are going to be the only things that allow the Sovereign to even survive this and be imprisoned rather than just killed, because there's a part of me that's just like, God, what this guy does is so despicable. And you think back to when he manipulated that soldier into committing suicide. Like, this is not a guy. This is not a good guy. This is not a guy that maybe deserves to continue to draw breath, you know? And if you think of Wonder Woman and the things she's done in the past, like snapping Maxwell Lord's neck, you would have to say the Sovereign is at least as despicable as Maxwell Lord, maybe worse. But different era of DC, different times, and so I imagine he'll survive. The Sovereign will survive at the mercy, you know, because Wonder Woman basically allows him to. But again, this is just a really interesting story that King is building here, and I'm really curious to see what happens next. Because it also goes hand in hand with something else I said to Tom and Daniel when they were on the show recently about reminding us just how powerful Wonder Woman is. A lot of times she takes a backseat to Superman and Batman as well, and that really shouldn't be the case, because in terms of sheer power, in terms of how formidable she is, she's several steps ahead of Batman, you know? But, you know, if you just ask somebody, they'd say, yeah, who would win in a fight, Batman or Wonder Woman? I guarantee you 9 out of 10 DC fans are going to say Batman. But I just don't think that's, you know, if we buy into their actual powers and abilities, I just don't think that's actually the case. I think Wonder Woman's going to beat Batman probably 10 times out of 10.
Absolutely.
But again, it all goes into saying, well, Batman has time to plan, blah, blah, blah. No, no caveats. Just drop them at any random locale on Earth and say, go. Wonder Woman should win 10 times out of 10. So anyway, the art by Sampere is up to his usual standards, just absolutely excellent. I really do think Daniel has become the best DC artist and maybe the best comic book artist, best superhero comic book artist working right now. Like, his storytelling, his composition, his technical ability, this guy is amazing. And I'll brag a little bit and say, I told you guys so. I told you so. I told you when I reviewed that Scott Snyder Justice League annual to pay attention. This guy's a superstar in the making. He definitely has arrived. This issue shows it once again. He is just fantastic. And you love to see when, you know, good things happen to good people. And the fact that he's getting the credit that he deserves for his really hard work, I think is just amazing. He better win the Eisner this next year because for best penciler, because he is just fantastic. I can't say enough good things about his art, and Daniel as a person he's fantastic. So anyway, I know you were kind of bummed out about the interlude issue. Are we back on track here with this one?
I'm really conflicted with this issue. I'm really conflicted. I could very easily go on, give you a rave on this issue, and I could also go on a rant. But let me give you the rave part first, and then I'll rant a little bit. The art, of course, is absolutely fantastic, and the Sovereign. I wish we knew more about the Sovereign, because to be honest with you, I still feel that I wish we knew more about him so I could feel that he was a little bit more of a threat. I really didn't feel him to be much of a threat this issue. And I was really disappointed with the Lasso of Lies, because it's really not that formidable. The Lasso of Truth is unbreakable. The Lasso of Lies is unbreakable. The Lasso of Lies should be unbreakable. It does, and Wonder Woman is the embodiment of truth, but I took some issue with her being able to break the Lasso of Lies. I understand why it's scripted that way. It's too convenient. It would be like to me, it's like putting kryptonite in front of Superman. The longer you're exposed to kryptonite, the weaker Superman gets. He doesn't overcome kryptonite through willpower and throw the kryptonite away after the longer he's exposed to kryptonite. It shouldn't be that way with the Lasso of Lies, but it is here.
It's a lie that it's unbreakable. I think that was kind of the point.
Well, no, I do, and I get that, and I get that. And that's because this is a story that has to be told in one issue, and it is told in one issue, and that's how Tom King is scripting this story. His entire run seems to be a series of vignettes where each issue he's checking off his box, saying, "I want to say this about Wonder Woman. I want to say this. I want to say this. I want to say this. I want to say this." Oh, and that's what he's doing, and he's doing a good job for one shots, because literally and this is part of my rave, and I tell you I'm conflicted here. This is actually a really good. You could just give this issue to anybody and say, this Wonder Woman is the embodiment of truth. This is what it's about. This is what she is. And you could, and it's really cool, because here you have this Mr. Magoo-like character. He's an old sovereign. He's old. He's set in his ways, and he's trapped. And he looks like he's in his 80s, which would make his formative years, his prime years, being in the 1950s. And he thinks of women should be in their place, like in the 1950s. And the way the lasso of lies seems to work in this issue is that whatever the belief, whatever the sovereign wants you to believe, he can impose his belief system on you through the lasso of lies. And he's forcing this imagery, almost forcing this imagery onto Diana, onto Wonder Woman. But Wonder Woman likely, because she is in many ways the embodiment of truth, not necessarily through the lasso of truth, because there's one school of thought with Wonder Woman that says that Wonder Woman herself is the conduit through which the lasso of truth becomes even more powerful. So there's a school of thought that I think Tom King is embracing here, that Wonder Woman herself contains aspects of an embodiment of a universal truth, that she has that independent of the lasso. There's a school of thought and storylines that go along that line of thinking. And I think that's kind of what is being conveyed here, is Wonder Woman is so filled with the sort of like an objective truth. And even this was hinted at the end of Death Metal, where Wonder Woman, makes that deal with the cosmic gods with Scott's at the end of Snyder's story there. And and she's able to see through the lies, and that her will to see through the lies overcome is what ultimately wins the day. And there's some great bits of dialogue here, script by Tom King, where she says, "The truth is, I'm not who you think I am who I think I am." Great line that embodies Wonder Woman. And I particularly love that when Hippolyta shows up at the end and says, the way the lasso of lies works is that whatever the sovereign believes, he can make you believe if you're wrapped in the lasso of lies. And when Hippolyta says to Diana, "I told you the rope cannot be broken, but when did you ever believe me?" And because Tom King in I think it was in issue 3 where he scripted the story where even as a youngster, Wonder Woman's always defied her mother. Wonder Woman always thought she was capable of more. It was Wonder Woman who defied her mother that entered the contest. She believed more in herself than even her mother did. And it was Wonder Woman's own belief, even as her entire life. She always thought she was capable of more than what others, even her own mothers and fellow Amazons, thought she was capable of. And there's no difference here. And this is the embodiment of that she's overcoming that, if she can overcome all that, I'll be damned if some old decrepit old Mr. Magoo looking MFer is going to tell me what I believe and who I am. And that's what the powerful image is here at the end. And so in that respect, that's my rave. That's what I like about this issue. It's kind of cool. It's Wonder Woman kicking ass. And she says at the beginning, she utters to him, I want to put my hand, my palm on your Adam's apple and push. And the Adam's apple being a reference to, of course, there's a male reference there, Adam's apple. And of course, right at the end, she has her palm right around her hand, right around the throat of the sovereign, right? I'm pushing on his Adam's apple, just like Wonder Woman promised. And she that's the truth of that. And so in that respect, it's kind of cool. The callback to the 1950s imagery, the image of a 1950s woman and couple is probably in many ways a cliche idea of sort of like the ultimate of male chauvinism. The embodiment of that, you could argue, was in the 1950s, where women knew their place, they cooked for their husband, they did their womanly duties in many ways. It's the dream of all of us white males, if we're really truthful with ourselves. I would love that. I'm always happiest when my wife cooks for me. But in any event, I get it. Now, part of my rant, though, is where's the larger story coming in here? That's the thing. What about, what is this? How is the Sovereign really a threat? It seems to me that he's so obsessed with Wonder Woman. Really, the question I would have is, what's the big deal? Let's say Wonder Woman didn't overcome the lasso of lies. So what? Is that his end game? Okay, congratulations. You got Wonder Woman believing these lies. What's the threat to the world? Like, what's at stake here? You humiliated the Amazons. You've made the world hate the Amazons. Okay, and you now. And how was that done? Did he use the lasso of lies to manipulate the entire world? How much of that was the lasso of lies and the sovereign versus how much of that's Amanda Waller? I know that's an outside question. Tom King doesn't care about the larger storyline and leading in absolute power. But I'm kind of curious, what exactly is the threat of the sovereign here? Because it seems to me at the end of the day, we're just dealing with an old male chauvinist a-hole. And yes, we got some great moments for Wonder Woman. I absolutely love the epic battle between her and the Rogues and everything. It's kind of cool, but I'm still kind of wondering. I was expecting this major threat, and it doesn't. It feels like this is really just a threat against this sovereign. We still don't know the origin of the lasso of lies. Really, we still don't know the origin of the sovereign. But maybe that's to come. There is a scene in here where Yara Flor, the other Wonder Girl, the two Wonder Girls, and Donna Troy have Sarge Steele tied to a tree, and they put an apple on his head, and they're interrogating him to try to find out where Diana's been taken. So ultimately, it's implied, although not said. They don't technically ask Sarge Steele any questions, but it's inferred from the scene that they want to know where Wonder Woman is, and so that'll probably play itself out next issue. One of the things that Tom King's doing here is he's not telling a linear tale. Really, he's telling a tale where it's like he's taken vignette stories over a course of many months or weeks. You know, he gives us a battle here. He gives us Wonder Woman shopping with Superman here, a Wonder Woman seeing a cancer kid here, Wonder Woman battling rogues here, Wonder Woman having a conversation with Sarge Steele, Wonder Woman having a conversation with Steve on the steps of the Washington Capitol, and they're all sort of like scenes that are not necessarily taking place in quick succession. And I think Tom King's doing that because he wants to focus on a very specific iteration of Wonder Woman that he wants to focus on various aspects of who he thinks Wonder Woman is. And I think for the most part, it's going to work and will make a real nice 12-issue tale, beautifully illustrated by Daniel Sampere. In that respect, it will work. There's another side of me, though, that cries out for a little bit more substance in the plot, which I'm not going to get. But I got to tell you, this art is so gorgeous, and Tom King really what he says about Wonder Woman in these issues is so strong that I think most readers are probably going to enjoy it. And I think Tom King is a divisive writer in parts, but I think the slight majority are enjoying his Wonder Woman run. And I will say that despite sales woes, Tom King's Wonder Woman is selling better than most DC titles. So, and you can definitely see why when you look at this issue. So,
yeah, there's a school of thought that says all Tom King's done is he's just repeating what Clunrad did, right? But instead of using Dr. Psycho as the male chauvinist, it's just a sovereign.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I don't think that's actually
that,
true.
I think. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's actually. I mean, that one aspect of the story, yes, you're having an antagonist that has chauvinism as a motivation, but other than that, which I think is like a superficial sort of coincidence. I don't think that's really there's much merit to that. Really, when you think about Wonder Woman, and Tom talked about this in several interviews, talked about it when last time we had him on the show when he talked about being offered Wonder Woman and being like, I don't want to write Wonder Woman, but then going back and looking at her earliest days, her earliest iteration, the origin of the character, how tied in it was with so many gender sort of cliches, right? And assumptions about gender and bondage and all that sort of stuff. It's a bit of a problematic. And he talked about the challenge of that. So I think he welcomed that challenge. But I say that to say it's sort of hard if you're going to go back and do Wonder Woman, get at the core of the character. That's sort of baked in, right? This idea of people seeing her as less simply because she's a woman, right? So I get it. I get why if you're going to go back to that, the earliest ideas of who she is as a character and what have you, and you're going to come up with an antagonist, that gender is going to be part of that. So I don't buy into the whole just repeating the whole Dr. Psycho thing. So also I'll mention, we had Tom on to, I've been friends with Tom for a long, long time. And first time he was on the show was before he even had any big two work. And he talked way back then about not wanting to tell stories in a linear fashion. He likes to challenge himself. And, there's that, I don't know if it won Eisner, but I know it was nominated. The Grayson series that he co-wrote with Tim Seeley, which was his first big two work. And how they had that Nightwing or Grayson story that was told in reverse, like it kind of like Memento, right? The movie, and you could read it backwards or forwards. And yeah, that's a perfect example of Tom just not wanting to tell a linear story. And then when we had him on to talk about Killing Time, the Batman series that we really enjoyed that introduced us to the Help for the first time, and how he came on the show and he told me, yeah, I'm doing A to B to C to D this time. And he didn't. There were flashbacks to ancient Samaria and jumped all over what I was like, damn it, Tom. I sort of think that the guy can't. He is not capable of telling a story in linear time. But here's the thing, right? Since he never does that, when he actually does, I think it would be like more of a challenge. Like he's like, I want to tell a story in a way that hasn't been done before, or in a non-linear fashion. I want to challenge myself. Eventually, he's going to get to the point where he's done it in every other way possible. The only thing he hasn't done is told it from A to B to C to D to E. He'll have the hardest time doing that. That will actually be the non-normal way to tell a story, to tell it in linear fashion. So, but I do agree with you. Like this series has been, as much as it's a sequential series, an episodic series, it has felt a little bit like a series of vignettes. And, I'm sure that's purposeful. Might we be getting more out of it if it were told in a little bit more of an episodic fashion? Who's to say? But it might have to do with just the amount of real estate and the amount of time that Tom was, okay, I'm going to be on this for 12 issues. I got to hit these high points because he is telling such a big story, as opposed to, he mentioned this also when he was on with Daniel. He didn't want to do what he did on Batman, right? Like he got so much flack for that taking so long, and it was such a slow burn. Now it's almost like he swung a little too far the other way, and we're getting the high points, but we lose a little bit of the connective tissue. So I think the perfect Tom King ongoing series might be a mixture, right? Where it doesn't go as slow as Batman goes, but it goes a little slower than this. Because I don't think this feels choppy, but I do think you hit the nail on the head where you said it does feel like a bunch of standalones that tell a bigger story. But we do lose a little bit of context. Just like I was saying with Phillip Kennedy Johnson, we're required to do a little bit more heavy lifting and fill in a little bit more of the blanks, which we get enough context in the art and the story to do that. But sometimes it's nice to be spoon-fed, right?
Yeah.
And not have to make assumptions. So anyway, let's move on. We have the final issue of J. Garrick, The Flash. Issue number 6. This is from writer Jeremy Adams. Diego Orletuga is the artist. Luis Guerrero on colors. Steve Wands on letters. The colors, as they've been throughout, very primary, very bright. Diego Orletuga on art does a fantastic job. You really feel the stakes of the story. You really feel the tension as Jay is doing all he can to rescue his daughter. But all I'll say is, with the build-up to this, I don't want to say the ending was convenient, because it certainly wasn't convenient for Jay. He really sacrificed, ended up putting himself in the hospital. But I don't know, maybe it's just a product of, I was enjoying the story so much I kind of didn't want it to end. But a little paint by the numbers in terms of, Jay rises to the occasion and saves the day. And I'm going to be sad to see this end. But it kind of plays out the way that you would expect, which, again, it's a Golden Age character. Maybe that's to be expected. But I think, based on what we've gotten from Jeremy Adams in the past and the fantastic art in this issue, I'll definitely chalk this up as a win. I really enjoyed this. And that splash page when Jay Garrick breaks into the laboratory of Dr. Elemental Hughes, as it were. Oh my God, it's so good. It's so good. Yeah, that page there, if you're watching this on YouTube, where he breaks through it comes up from underground, and breaks into this island hideout. And he just huge, and man, it's not quite a full page splash, 3/4 page.
And he rips out the shark teeth, and he has the shark teeth in his hand. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. So, I mean, I just love Jeremy Adams. That's all I can say. The guy just gets it when it comes to these characters. And like I said, this is a golden age character. He's a little bit more simplistic. It doesn't have the same baggage or the same sort of complexity that like a Wally West or even a Barry Allen has. So you can understand why the ending would be a little bit more by the numbers, as it were, but no less enjoyable for that. So yeah, I'm sad this is ending. I'm sad we only have one Jeremy Adams book a month from DC now. But he does have his Flash Gordon, if you're a fan of serial, afternoon serials, Flash Gordon over at Mad Cave. So looking forward to that. What do you think of this final issue?
I thought it did wrap up very conveniently, but it was only 6 issues long, and so it's kind of supposed to do that. But it also needed to wrap up, I think, conveniently and in a happy way, because that's the nature of these characters. And also, frankly, I think Jeremy Adams, he's playing to his strengths. That's his calling card. The guy knows how to write happy and joyful tales. The guy was meant to write DC Comics, or at least he understands. He seems to just inherently understand the tone and the atmosphere that we readers, at least we longtime readers like you and I, that we really want out of DC. And I also really appreciate the explanation, and this happens from time to time and is necessary for Justice Society of America characters. We get an explanation as to why Jay Garrick and his wife Judy are so young. And why they should be dead by now. What are they, 120 years old? Well, no, it's because of Dr. Elemental's experiments on them. Dr. Elemental, of course, create his experiments with hard water, ultimately led to Jay Garrick becoming the Flash. And ultimately, the experiments also gave Judy Garrick her powers. But instead of giving Judy, her mother, superpowers, it gave her longer life. So that explains why they're 120 years old, but they only look like they're 80 or 75 or 60 or whatever. So I kind of appreciate that. And I really like the emotion expressed by by Judy. She's a genuinely likable character. She's emotional, yet she's in control of. She's grounded, and the emotion she expresses is sincere. It's not over the top. She's a likable character, and not every character, new characters I particularly liked. For example, I don't like Yara Flor. This is a prime example of. It's so important. To the first impression that a character makes is so important, because I when you look at the impression that Yara Flor made in her series, it kind of didn't work, and that stain has remained with the character since, and now she's got to, in my view, she's trying to dig herself out of a hole that didn't need to be dug in the first place for Yara Flor. But Judy Garrick, she's likable out of the gate, and why? Because she's written that way. She's written well, and thought's gone into it, and it, and I love the ending here. It shows, Judy Garrick's, sleeping peacefully in her bed. She's not running. She's fast. She's slowed down. Sometimes in life, it's not about running fast. It's about standing still, and sometimes it's about sleeping peacefully in your bed, knowing that you have a loving family that you can wake up to. Beside her bed is a picture of the justice of her family, and the younger legacy characters of the Justice Society of America, and the characters that she met with Stargirl and the Lost Children. This I wish this wasn't the end of this series. I wish we would get more of this. I also wish, and I say this with great respect, I'm not a big fan of the cover. I think Jeremy Adams should have been maybe given. I think some of the covers could have been a little bit better on this series. I'm nitpicking, but Jeremy Adams, I did actually. I direct messaged him today, and I congratulated him on entertaining us with the Flash. I've been enjoying it. I asked him if he's going to be part of the Ultimate. If he's got any other books coming up for DC, he confirmed that. Well, he's told that to a lot of people. This is well known that he's not going to be doing that. I thanked him for those. He always has his videos. I love he always posts on Twitter, and on every time he gets a comp box from DC Comics containing his Green Lantern or Flash comics. I mean, I love the fact that he always opens them up with his kid's present and he plays it online. And he has so much fun. And he's a family man. He's a great guy. And you know that, I know that. And he's one of those, he brings that joy that he has as a writer. He brings that to the characters that he writes. And this is just a prime example of that. And overall, this has been a really enjoyable series. So,
yeah, again, sad that we're not getting multiple issues. Hopefully, he stays on Green Lantern for a while, at least.
Yeah.
Anyway, last book we're going to talk about in detail, Batman Offworld #4, written by Jason Aaron, pencils are by Doug Mahnke, inks by Jaime Mendoza, colors by David Barron, letters by Troy Petrie. What did you think of this?
I liked it. I've loved Batman Offworld since the beginning. I think Jason Aaron, maybe he had a tumultuous Marvel run, but boy, I've been enjoying his work here at DC, and I even his Bizarro story with Superman, I enjoyed substantially most of that. And this Batman Offworld, Doug Mahnke's art, I love Doug Mahnke's art. This story of Batman just learning the ropes of getting to know the universe, so to speak. I mean, Batman takes off into space because he's beat up by an alien in Gotham City. And so he wants to go. I mean, it starts off with him just going to space because he wants to learn how to beat up aliens. And because that's what Batman does. He always has to prepare. He doesn't want to be humiliated. He wants to learn something about the alien races that will occasionally come into contact with Earth. And then over the last 4 issues, he's managed to defeat this Captain Sin and managed to actually take over his starship called the War Storm. Batman does that in spectacular fashion. He does so with just him and his sidekick Punchbot, whose sole purpose is to get punched in the face. And of course he's got the other character Ione, sort of a love interest who she wants to be his love interest. And of course there's there's actually a cover B, I believe, or cover C of Batman kissing Ione, and who's this kick-ass Tamaranian character. And Batman in this issue, he could go back to Earth. There's no reason why Batman shouldn't go back to Earth. He's proven himself. He's already made a name for himself in the galaxy, pretty much. He could go back to Earth. But no, he wants to take out the Black Sun Corporation, the mining corporation that consists of this Black Sun character, along with their Black Sun and this Lord Whisper character, who hire this character called the Thanagarian to take out Batman. And ultimately, in this issue, Batman asks Ione to come with him to help take out the Black Sun Corporation. But Ione is heartbroken. But she doesn't want to show it because she's got a real rough and tough exterior. She's just pissed off at Batman because she's rejected. He kind of rejected her. Batman, he's let's just say that as hot as Ione is, she's not in Batman's eyes. She's not Catwoman, and Batman's just not, although I think it was implied that they slept together, but he doesn't want to have a relationship with her because, of course, it's Batman. As this is probably first year Batman. He's hell bent on his mission and he wants to get back to Gotham. Batman doesn't want to lose focus by banging some alien tail. He's got a job to do. He wants to get her done, but he also knows that Ione is really, really good at. She's a kick-ass warrior in her own right, and she has a lot of knowledge about the alien races that Batman could help Batman defeat the Black Sun Corporation because Ione helped train Batman, taught him a lot about the weaknesses of various alien physiologies and what have you. She knows a lot about the various alien cultures that could really be an asset to Batman. And Batman is all about surrounding himself with people that know things that he doesn't. Because why? Because Batman prepares. And this is a first-year Batman, so he very much needs allies. And of course, nowhere is that made more clear than when he ends up facing this really awesome-looking, intimidating character called the Thanagarian, who is this sort of like bounty hunter who's basically hired by the Black Sun Corporation to take out Batman. And this issue Doug Mahnke does such a great job. Batman bites off more than he can chew. It looks like he's going to be defeated by the end of this issue. It almost looks like he's about to be defeated by the Thanagarian. Meanwhile, Ione is drinking and drowning her sorrows in a bar somewhere in another part of the galaxy, where she hears two other aliens talk about how the Thanagarian has been hired to take out this Batman. And of course, you know that Ione is likely going to go back and try to probably rescue Batman from the hands of the Thanagarian. And ultimately, there's going to be this battle between Batman and the Black Sun Corporation. I also liked, it was a very small little a small little reference, but Batman renamed the Warstorm, the starfighter that he took away, he stole from Captain Sin. He renamed it the Storm. So it's no longer the Warstorm. And of course, it's such a that Batman would do that. He doesn't want to call it the Starship Warstorm, so he just calls it the Storm, because he tells the aliens, go tell the Black Sun go tell the Black Suns that the storm is coming. Not the Warstorm, the storm. And I love how Captain Sin is humiliated by Black Sun, is utterly humiliated, and it's so funny. And she says, let me get this straight. You were defeated by this Batman and his pet punchbot and android whose sole function is to get repeatedly punched in the face. Is there anything I'm missing? Oh yes, he also had a pet wolf. Yes. I mean, it was just, I love the dialogue here. I also am really curious as to what the power of this Lord Whisper is. This character whispered something. I didn't know what this Lord Whisper said, but then it showed Captain Sin. I don't know if it was killed, but his face was bleeding. What exactly does this power have? It seems to have a power that can cross space and maybe space and time, that whatever this character whispers becomes reality. I don't know, but I'm really curious what the power set is. And, this Black Sun brothers or whatever, they seem to be very powerful enemies now. And Batman, Batman's really good at fighting people, but he's got to prepare. The only reason Batman was able to take out Captain Sin is because he had plenty of time to prepare for it, and he had the help of Ione. And now he's up against the Thanagarian. This is just epic galaxy fun stuff, and it's new. This feels new. This is Batman in a brand new environment, and what makes Batman cool is that put him in an unknown environment, he finds a way to win, and that's what Batman's trying to do here, and every issue feels that way. It feels fresh, it feels exciting, and with fantastic art to boot, amazing colors. This is this is definitely my third candidate for pick of the week. So what do you think?
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of Black Bolt, that Lord Whisper, right? How he can't talk. When he talks, like bad things happen. So I don't know if his abilities have something to do with saying things out loud. We'll have to see. But I don't really have a lot to add to what you said. You really hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is just fun. It feels fresh. Yes, it's Batman in the early days, but a different story, one that hasn't been touched on before. And it's not Batman jumping for the moon, but it does seem like he's taken a lot of punishment, and you would think he'd be a little more damaged, but you let that go by the wayside because the art is so great and the story is just so fun. And this feels in keeping with who Batman is. You mentioned him rejecting Ione, and that feels like something a young Batman would do. He's so laser focused on accomplishing his mission, maybe to the detriment. Like, just lie to her, dude, so she'll help you. Like, you don't have to,
exactly.
You don't have to actually, because that seems like that's the Batman that we know. That's the Batman that would create Brother Eye, a Batman that would lie and manipulate. But yeah, I guess he hasn't learned those lessons yet. But the color work by David Barron, the artwork by Doug Mahnke. You mentioned the Thanagarian. He looks amazing. He looks so brutal and fierce. The wolf looks great. I mean, there's nothing not to love. So yeah, I Jason Aaron, he had a long run at Marvel, and his Thor run was, very critically acclaimed, and fans seemed to love it. And then his Avengers run less so. And yeah, it seemed like he kind of wore out his welcome there, which I don't really get, because I think the guy's super talented. So it's nice to have him over here at Marvel. Maybe it was just time for a change of scenery. So love what he's doing on this series. Curious to see what he does next. I think you enjoyed the the Bizarro story more than me, but it wasn't bad. So yeah, I can't wait to see what he does next. Would love to see him on Flash. Again, nothing
Yeah.
against Cy Spurrier, but I think Jason Aaron on Flash would be interesting. So anyway, like I said, that does it for the books we're going to talk about in detail. As far as collections go, there's a few of them this week. We've got Batman White Knight presents Generation Joker hardcover. That's the last Sean Gordon Murphy verse story from DC for a while. We know Sean's focusing on some other creator-owned stuff right now. We also have City Boy. That was written by Greg Pak with this new character, City Boy, that collects the whole series. We've got the Jurassic League also coming out in trade. That's the sort of part of the multiverse where instead of the Justice League heroes being human, they're dinosaurs. That was a really fun series. Also, Tim Drake Robin Volume 2 comes out. That series, I don't think it was particularly well received. That was the one that was written by Megan Fitzmartin. So that collects the last part of that series, issues 7 through 10. And then there's also a Justice League Dark Rebirth omnibus hardcover. It is, where am I looking here? I thought that it had a page count. Oh, there it is. 1,456 pages. It's $150. It collects Justice League Dark, the 2018 series, so the Rebirth series, issues 1 through 29, annual number 1, 2021 annual, the Justice League Dark Wonder Woman Witching Hour special, Aquaman 66, which ties in Black Adam Endless Winter special, some tie-ins with Flash in 767, 777, 778, 779, Justice League 58, 72, 73, 74. That's during the Scott Snyder run. Justice League Endless Winter specials 1 and 2. The Superman Endless Winter special. The Teen Titans Endless Winter special. The Wonder Woman 56 and 57. Wonder Woman Justice League Dark. The Witching Hour number 1. And then some selected material from Justice League 59 through 71 and Future State Justice League 1 and 2, as well as Secrets of Sinister House. So it's pretty comprehensive, covers the whole of Ram V's Justice League Dark epic, if you will. So if you are so inclined, definitely check that out. Because it does seem like they don't keep these omnibuy in print indefinitely. And there is rumors of a Justice League Dark movie at some point. So I don't know. That could be, I mean, it's hard to say, speculator alert, go out and spend $150. But it could be worth substantially more at some point. So yeah, that does it for the issues that are coming out this week. Although I think there's some reprints that are coming out.
Well, there's a facsimile of the first issue of Crisis on Infinite Earths that comes out this week too.
Yeah, exactly. So if you are so inclined, I mean, if you're a DC fan and you haven't read Crisis on Infinite Earth, all I see is what are you doing with your life, man? Like,
Exactly.
That's required reading at this point. Such a not just a monumental series in terms of DC history, but really comic book history. The first kind of universal reboot. So anyway, book of the week, Rocky. I know you mentioned 3 of them. Can you narrow it down here?
Yes, I can narrow it down for me, and I'm just going to come up. I really liked Hellblaizer this week. I thought it was excellent. I love Flash. I love Green Lantern. Batman Offworld is probably my second favorite. But if I look at the full package here, I think for the first time in a long time, I got to give some props to something scripted by Willamson, and I got to go with Superman number 13. I really enjoyed it. I think he's just done a really good job. And aside from my few nitpicks there, I really enjoyed it. Sandoval on the art this is really good. This feels like a major epic event. And maybe it's because Willamson is just focusing on one comic really, and it's a Superman tale and it's a Brainiac tale. And it just feels really, really great. And I hope it nails the landing. But I also know it's leading into Absolute Power as well, because Brainiac is one of the villains of Absolute Power coming up. But this feels like it's going somewhere important, and the story seems to back it up. And Williamson is doing the best job he's ever done, in my opinion, of weaving multiple subplots together. And so far, it seems consistent, as far as I can tell, and that's awesome, and I love it. I got to give him full props, and I do note that part one of in Action Comics was your pick of the week last week, so I'm curious to know what your pick of the week this week is, Chase.
Well, first I'll say, did you mentally block out the fact that he's writing Green Arrow also?
I'm not a fan of the Green Arrow. Yeah, I'm not a fan.
Focusing on one story. Yeah, we'll set aside the Green Arrow thing. Yeah, that has been a bit underwhelming. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the highlights this week for me are the same as you. I thought Batman Offworld, fantastic. Green Lantern, great. Flash, great. Hellblazer, Dead in America, great. Seems like I like Wonder Woman a little more than you, but ultimately, I can't pick anything but Superman as well. Usually we try to diversify. We don't talk about them ahead of time. But I can't pick anything else. This and more to do with, specific moments or art, visual moments in the issue. Just the overall feel, how it feels like it's building up to something. It's compelling. It's epic. Right from the awesome cover. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see like it checks all the boxes. So I couldn't pick anything else. So. Yeah, like I mentioned when we were talking about it, specifically how it might lead into Absolute Power coming later this year, I guess we'll see. I do sort of feel like it was standing on its own, but maybe they'll do a good job of tying it in. We'll have to see. We know that event is coming up, and on the heels of that event in September, Rocky mentioned it earlier, we're being told that there is sort of an ultimate, to borrow a phrase from across the street at Marvel, the ultimate line, where it was kind of a modern retelling of the origins of these characters, Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, that sort of thing. We're getting what's called Absolute Universe over at DC. So as Rocky mentioned earlier, the main continuity, the main universe will continue, but supposedly we're getting kind of an update. We're not exactly sure. Scott Snyder's name has been mentioned as kind of the showrunner, but it's also been specifically said that he's going to take a very hands-off approach and let the writers just have a lot of, and creative teams, artists as well, just have a lot of freedom to tell the stories that they want to tell. So how this is all going to work, I guess we'll have to wait and see. It doesn't sound so different from what Didio was trying to do with G5, right? Or 5G,
Yeah.
the generations or what have you.
Yeah.
Except that was going to replace the main line. So maybe, leave it alone for the people that are enjoying the main line. So that's where the whole idea of the Ultimate Universe, which ran alongside Marvel Universe and was a runaway hit at first, but then sales gradually diminished to the point where they just folded it into the regular Marvel 616 universe, which is why we have 2 Spider-Men right now. So we'll see. We'll see how this all plays out.
Yeah.
I'm sure at San Diego Comic-Con this year, there'll be a lot more news about it. How well it'll work.
I'm actually curious about Al Ewing on Wonder Woman. Actually, sounds, because I know Al Ewing had a Thor run there, and I'm actually really looking forward to what Al Ewing, how he would script Wonder Woman. So I'm actually really curious, because he's got a different way of thinking when it comes to mythology, and I think that's really what Wonder Woman needs. And so I'm really curious to see. He mentioned that he sees Wonder Woman as an adventurer. And so I kind of like that, Wonder Woman as an adventurer, and I wonder how that's going to influence his story. So the little things that they're teasing and dropping there and hinting that this is sort of a revitalization of the New 52 type of thinking outside the box, being less hindered by maybe editorial, and that's probably at Scott Snyder's insistence, because he wanted to do things a certain way. They're saying all the right things, but DC has said all the right things before on these events or on these new lines, and so my fingers are crossed that we're going to be getting something really exciting in September. And if it's going to be a separate line and we still have the mainstream line, well, then maybe we'll get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, there's a lot of people's names: Rom V, Donny Cates, Mark Waid. and this absolute line or absolute comics sort of thing. Yeah, we just don't know what it's going to be. There was a time when DC tried to do something similar, and they called it All-Star Comics. That's where we got, All-Star Superman from Grant Morrison. We got All-Star Batman and Robin from Frank Miller, which never was finished, with art by Jim Lee. So, this can work, but again, it's not the first time DC's tried something like this. You remember, I can't even remember what the line was called, but when DC, and this again was a Didio thing, when after Rebirth, they tried to do like a Marvel thing in a lot of ways, where it was Marvel style and the artist was credited first. And it just didn't work because the creators weren't on the books long enough. But that was where we had the Robert Venditti Damage, which was a different Damage than the queer character. That Tony Daniel was on the art on that initially, and then Aaron Lopresti took over. But he was sort of a take on the Hulk. If you look at it, Didio did it's probably my favorite one of that line was Sideways, that he did with great art by Kenneth Rocafort, with the Sideways character that felt very much
DC's
like
Spider-Man, DC's Peter Parker.
DC's felt very much like DC's Peter Parker. I thought that line, it had a lot of potential, but it fizzled because the artist basically got poached to go work on other stuff at DC. That was the whole power struggle between Jeff Johns and Dan Didio. So we'll see. I think if they dedicate themselves to it in a way like they did with the New 52, it can work. But then at the end of the day, if it's super successful and then you lean into it and you start creating more and more titles, now you're putting out a ton of titles, and then it's hard to justify. You start cannibalizing your own readers. So then what you do is you end up going to the least selling titles, which would obviously be the titles in the regular universe, and you start paring those down, and then the absolute comics universe becomes the main universe. But then you have people that are mad because they like the original universe. Like it's problematic. But we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, tell good stories, people will show up. But a lot more to come on that when the time is right. So anyway, that's going to do it for this episode. Anything else you want to mention, Rocky?
No, I just I'm busy at work, but I'm I'm looking. I'll be going to the Calgary Expo this year for a day at least, and so I'm looking forward to the Calgary Expo this year. Todd McFarlane's going to be there, and I got my name on a lottery, hopefully I'll get at least a signature from him or a selfie. So I don't have the advantage of our friend Trevor Dark Knight Trevor Lankevich being there. He's not at Calgary Expo this year with promoting his comics, so I don't have a retailer badge. So I actually have to, I have to go in. I have to go in with the troglodyte masses. So I'll have to work a little bit harder for what I want to achieve.
Fair enough.
It should be a fun time.
All right. Don't forget, everybody, make sure you subscribe. If you're checking us out on YouTube, Rocky's channel, Comic Space Boom, ! Ring the notification bell, leave some comments below. We love to interact with viewers and listeners there. And be sure you subscribe so you know when new content comes out. Conversely, you can check us out on the audio Comic Source feed, wherever you get your podcast or your favorite podcasting platform or app. You can go back and listen to over 2,000 previous episodes, reviews, convention coverage, interviews, that sort of thing. It's all there for you. And you can also check out the Comic Source YouTube channel, where we're doing the Spawn Daily, going through a chronological history of Spawn. So just do a search for the Comic Source on YouTube and you'll find us. So once again, we want to thank everybody for joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.